Get your money ready for your next priority with AARP's trusted financial tools. Because the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Start planning today at aarp.org/money.
Welcome, everyone, to our AARP Illinois virtual event. I'm Helen, a proud AARP Illinois volunteer, and I'm thrilled you're joining us today. Our mission at AARP is to improve the quality of life for all as we age through advocacy, service, and information that foster positive social change. AARP is dedicated to creating a brighter and more secure financial future for individuals, advocating for retirement savings programs that enable all workers to save for their future. Our efforts aim to empower individuals to take control of their financial journey with information, knowledge, and resources. Thank you for joining us for today's Financial Security virtual event. We hope you will feel more equipped as you navigate your financial future with confidence.
Good morning and welcome to Planning for Your Future with AARP Illinois. I'm Lori Hendren, Senior Associate State Director for AARP Illinois, and we're thrilled to have you all joining us today. Our focus today is elder law, and we're going to be exploring various aspects of estate planning, long-term care, and the rights of the elderly. To shed light on this important topic, we have our very special guest, Steve Anderson, an elder law attorney and a contractual lobbyist for AARP Illinois. We want to thank you, Steve. And if you've been joining us for about a year, 2, 3, we've been doing this about every month. And so we want to thank you for coming back. These are very important conversations, discussions, and one-on-ones with you, our listening audience, educating you and listening about the topics that are important to you. And I think these have been very educational and great listening sessions as we grow together in this topic. So welcome, Steve. Thank you. And I do want to remind you, if all of you that are with us on Facebook and YouTube viewers, we are listening and watching your comments. So please, we highly encourage you to put your questions and your comments in the comment feed, your social media feeds. And we have our producer behind the scenes, which will let me know. And we're going to be giving those to Steve to be able to do our best to have Steve to be able to answer those questions and comments during our conversation. Again, we're only 30 minutes, so we're going to do the best. Otherwise, we hold on to those questions and comments and roll those into our scripts as we move forward. So no questions left on the table. But today our questions are going to go over a broad range of topics and serve as a starting point for discussions, planning, and consultation. But really, if you do have any really good questions, make sure you talk to your family or your professional advisor in elder law, financial planning, and healthcare. Keep in mind that the specifics of elder law may vary by the jurisdiction. So we're in Illinois. If you're in a different state, make sure you consult with an elder law attorney or a financial advisor that is advisable for your personal guidance. So again, let's get going, Steve, because the clock is ticking. Steve, what is elder law and why is it important for seniors and their families?
Sure, and thank you, Lori, for having me on. I always enjoy these. Two things I want to say right before I answer that question. Absolutely. Number one, you already hinted at it, which is that we are not talking about a specific jurisdiction's laws today. We're really giving an overview of every jurisdiction. So in a sense, that means this won't apply to any particular state. I'm not giving you Illinois law. I'm not giving you, California law, because we could have listeners from wherever. So consider this an overview. Please don't consider it specific legal advice for your situation. So that's number one. Number two is it's gonna be okay. That is my theme throughout this, is that our ability, our discussions here, all of this is hopefully going to help you. Well, let's say you implement some of it, but not all of it. It's going to work out. It's okay. The laws are designed for people who don't get it all done. So don't worry and think that, oh no, I didn't do absolutely everything Steve said and everything Lori said. My family is going to be destroyed over. It's not going to happen. It's going to be okay. So with that, what is elder law and why is it important to seniors and their families? So elder law is I characterize it as kind of a subspecialty of estate planning and the general practice of law. you could go to an attorney licensed in your state, and that attorney will probably be able to advise you on the general aspects of estate planning and just general law as it concerns, say, your property, insurance, healthcare. But an elder law attorney, that's their focus. That's all they really do. And so they're much more attuned to, if you ask them a question about your home and, I want to transfer my home into a trust, they're going to know, they're going to hear in that there might be an aspect of that is important to your estate planning. And it might even affect Medicaid should you ever need that. So the difference between an estate planning attorney or any other attorney and elder law attorney is they're listening for that holistic approach for any question you might have, and they try to help plan for all of that. And I also like to say it's not just for seniors, but for anybody who wants to be a senior. So you can be a 25-year-old person and can benefit from all of this.
So let me ask you this, Steve. So when you're looking and you want an elder law attorney,
Right.
Is that training, kind of lack of a better term, when you become a plastic surgeon, right? You have to have specialty training in that. Or is that the truth when you're an elder law attorney, or do you just hang a shingle up and say, hey, I'm an elder law attorney?
Well, we hope that people do not just hang a shingle up and say I'm an elder law attorney, but it's not as strict as the medical profession where they get their certifications in it. And it varies state by state. So in Illinois, where I'm sitting, for example, we can't call ourselves specialists. We can say we focus in an area of law, but we cannot, by our ethical rules, say we are a specialty. Okay. That's different in other states. But there's also training and additional certifications that you can still get in every state to be an elder law attorney. So one of the most common of those comes through a group called NALA, the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. And it's an academy and it's a learning, and certification experience.
So if you're looking and you're talking to an attorney and you're looking for estate planning, is there, lack of a better term, but you're talking to someone, should you ask if you're a member of NALA? Would that be an appropriate thing to ask?
I think it is. I don't want to upset anyone who isn't a member of NALA. It's a voluntary organization, but I think it's a good one. I'm a member of it, and I have been forever, basically. And I think it's probably the top tier of people who practice in that area. But I by no means would suggest that there aren't attorneys who are not members who would be equally qualified. So, so I'm not endorsing NALA.
But there's others, or there's even states that have qualifications. But there could be, but I guess the point of this question is that you can have a conversation about what is your specific focus certification or focus on elder law specifically. And this could be an example to start that conversation, not endorsing, but as a conversation. Okay.
That's right.
How does estate planning differ from other aspects of elder law?
So continuing that same concept is, I think of the elder law attorney as the one who's going to be more expansive in listening to your problems. So when you come to that attorney with a specific issue, the elder law attorney isn't going to just answer that question. They're going to answer it in terms of both your future planning and, like, if you come and say, I want a will. Well, they're going to examine that not only in the context of your goal of leaving your assets to someone else, they're also going to examine that in the context of your overall asset picture. They're going to look at it in the context of, do you think you or your spouse or another loved one might need additional care in the future? Medicaid, Medicare, everyone's basically entitled to as long as you're a citizen. But Medicaid is a different sort of a system that can be applicable to not only seniors, but also young people. So maybe you have a family member, not you, not the person who's planning, but maybe you have a child with a disability. Well, that's part of elder law planning too, because you as that parent are going to say, I'm getting old. Who's going to take care of my child who's now an adult, but is still disabled? How do we do that? An elder law attorney can help with that, whereas maybe another attorney who's less familiar might have to send you to someone like an elder law attorney.
And I think we have a great question that came in from YouTube along the same lines. Is a trust with an outside guardian the best way to ensure a future for a disabled child with ADHD and is horrible with money?
It doesn't, it's not just ADHD that's horrible with money, let me tell you, and having my
Mhm.
own children. But they would laugh, by the way, because they would say, I'm the one who's bad with money. But the answer is that a trust is an excellent way of protecting assets for a child who you don't think can handle the financial aspects of it. So, but the question had an interesting nuance. It said an outside guardian and then a trust. So the trust, for the most part, will handle the financial aspects of that. That's what trusts do. So you could say maybe that's all I need. But I think with a person with any sort of significant disabilities, whether it's ADHD or anything else, the guardian typically will handle the personal aspects of life, the social aspects of life. And so the dual aspect of it, which the person who asked that question, is really a good suggestion, as a way to do that. There are lots of different other ways. That's not the only way to do it, but that is a good way.
Wow, thank you. So all of you that are joining us today, we're with Steve Anderson. He is a elder law attorney in Illinois and also contractual lobbyist with ARP. We are our series of elder law focus on all things that are elder law today talking, and we're joining you across the United States, across the world if you're with us today. And we're going to go back to some of our questions. Great question from YouTube. Is jurisdiction defined by states or counties? Again, we're in Illinois. You could be from all the way across the United States. So, Steve, why don't you go ahead and take that question for us?
Sure. So if you mentioned the world, so I'm really only licensed in Illinois in the federal court, not in the world. So the world might be different, but at least in the United States, jurisdiction for purposes of attorneys, if you're looking for an elder law attorney who practices in your jurisdiction, that's state. So it's statewide. Now, there may be local bar associations, for example, at the county level. Those are voluntary. They're not mandatory. You don't have to be a part of that. But legally, the jurisdiction is defined by your state. And then, and there's always an exception, right? Because we're talking about lawyers, so there's always an exception.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about something that's a federal issue, sometimes it's the federal government that's also defining it. And then that's United States wide.
Okay, wonderful. One more question. Again, join us. Please put your questions and comments in here. We have Steve for about 15 more minutes, and we love having these conversations with you. Facebook's, how do we avoid having our savings from being used for private pay when in nursing home before Medicaid will approve?
Ooh, great question.
Great
And
question.
super complicated.
Yeah.
So that's difficult. So in the United States, the general concept is that you pay for your own nursing home care until you're unable to. And then when you're unable to, then that transfers over to the federal government and the state government via a partnership called Medicaid. But Medicaid is need-based, right? So before you need it, you're supposed to pay private pay. But there are lots of ways to address that without, for example, impoverishing your spouse. Let's say we've got a married couple and one person needs nursing home care, but the other one still lives in the home, is still independent, and doesn't want to lose all their money, private pay. And then suddenly they're impoverished in poverty because they had to spend it all on a nursing home. So there are ways to do that. In every state, there are federal impoverishment laws. And I say federal, and then I said state. That's because the states can vary a little bit on what the feds allow them to do. But every state has a provision that allows, for example, the spouse that's still in the community to keep, for example, the home, to keep 100,000 plus in monetary assets, to keep a car, those sorts of things. But generally, let's say if you didn't have a spouse or you were a single person at that point and you wanted to try to keep your money, that's generally frowned upon by the feds. It used to be a lot easier, but they have tightened that down because the concept is that it's private pay until you can't afford it anymore. They do allow you to keep a certain amount of assets, even if you're single, but they're very low compared to what I just described for a spouse. Does that answer the question?
That's wonderful. Thank you. And so we're also sharing with everyone in the comments of the AARP Family Caregiving Guides. I think this is a great resource as we have these conversations about elder law and resources. These are guides for caregivers if you're in the role of making some of these discussions about certain questions you need to have. Because our next question for Steve is, what are essential documents to have in place as you age for yourself, your loved ones, or your caregivers? So AARP has a guide that might help start these conversations, and we put a link in there. And also there's a phone number that we can send you this guide. The AARP has a tremendous volume of free resources you can look and review. But let's ask our attorney here, what documents do we need to have ready to go?
Sure. So, and this again varies state by state, but I would say there are two documents that I think are most important, and then there's several more. But remember, no matter what, it's going to be okay, even if you don't fill out any of these. But number one and number two are powers of attorney for healthcare and powers of attorney for property. And so these are where you name an individual, a person, hopefully a person that you know and trust, to take over care of yourself, your money, your decision-making process when you no longer can. So you could name, your spouses, you could name your children, you could name a close friend. It doesn't matter. It's up. That choice is up to you. But those two documents, the power of attorney for property and the power of attorney for healthcare, are to me the two most important because they concern you during your life. Now, a lot of people will say, what about wills? What about trusts? Yes, those are important, and those are the next documents, but they're not as important as taking care of you while you're still alive. Those are about passing your assets on to your children or to whomever you want. You'll also hear the term living will in some states. Again, these vary by states. A living will is a good document, and it does a bit of what the healthcare power of attorney the healthcare power of attorney does, at least in Illinois. The difficulty with living wills, that the reason I don't really recommend them, again, only in Illinois for me, is that they're static. In other words, they kind of describe what you want to have happen with regard to life-sustaining treatment. In other words, do you pull the plug or not, if we're using a euphemism? But they're static. When you use a healthcare power of attorney, you name a person. And as long as you've talked with that person and they know your wishes, they can then know, given the unique circumstances of everyone's life, what you would have wanted. And they can adjust based on that. So those are the two biggies, though, is healthcare power of attorney for property and for, I'm mixing them up, healthcare and property, finances and healthcare.
Okay, our YouTube watchers are giving us some great questions. So, YouTube, this is holding me back. What are the best things to prepare and have for an initial meeting with an elder law or attorney to create a new trust, will, or POA? Great question, because you get billed by the minute or the hour and you don't want to waste time. I love this question. What do we have to have ready to go?
It is a great one. And it's funny too, because in my opinion, if the attorney is doing their job, before they're ever going to meet with you, they're going to send you a list. We do in my former law firm. We would send you, and it's kind of long, it's multiple pages long, asking you to fill it out so that when you show up, your attorney has already reviewed it. So, your time with that attorney is valuable. Like you just said, you're paying for that time. Mm-hmm. And so we want the attorney to have all the background information, and they know what they need from you. And so it's better for them to ask. So what I'd suggest is when you call to make an appointment, ask that attorney or that attorney's assistant, are you going to send me a list of what I need so that, the attorney can be prepared to talk with me? And if the answer is no, I think you think about that. I would much prefer an attorney who, and most elder law attorneys that I know do this, is they will send you out a laundry list, a whole application. It's not an application, to get them to be your attorney. It's an application to explain all of your assets, who you might want them to go to, just everything under the sun. It can be 5-6 pages long in our case. Sometimes we have clients who actually complain the other way, where they say, oh, it's too long. Can't I just talk you through this? Mm-hmm. And you could do that, but isn't it better if we have it ahead of time so we can kind of review it and make sure we're on the same page with you right away.
That's great. That's the takeaway of the day. I like that one. Next question from YouTube. As an Illinois teacher with a pension, I will not get husband's Social Security or my own. Will that affect long-term health insurance payouts?
Long-term health insurance payouts. Excuse me. I'm not exactly sure if I understand the question correctly, I'll be honest. But if the question is, can you have long-term care insurance, for example, the answer is absolutely. That's something that you pay for. When you're healthy, you typically take out those plans ahead of time, many years ahead of time, just like any kind of life insurance, for example, same sort of thing. And then when you need it, it starts to pay out. The pension will not affect the long-term care insurance. Okay, the insurance. What it will affect is it could affect your ability to receive Medicaid benefits. In other words, remember how I talked about when you've spent down? Well, that's income. Your pension is not an asset in that you have it all right away. It's a monthly benefit that you have. And so that's considered income appropriately. And so what would happen is that income would likely go to your care every month before Medicaid picks up the balance. So the reality is, if we're talking about your pension as it affects Medicaid benefits, it does have an effect, but it's not really going to affect you very directly, because at the end of the day, you'll see that you are still getting the care you need and it's being paid for. But one caveat, you said myself and my husband. So if a person is married, your income can go to your husband to some degree in your example. So even that will be a benefit that you will receive that won't be implicated, or it won't. It depends on the amount of your pension. There are upward limits, so I don't know what those are for you in particular. But what will happen is most likely the bulk of your pension, even if you go in, even on Medicaid, that will go to your husband in your example. I hope that helps.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a great question. What are the implications of remarriage on estate planning and elder law issues?
Yeah, and it's such a wonderful thing when people have lived a full life with their spouse, and then after that ends for whatever reason, they decide they find somebody else. That's a beautiful thing. And so the law is designed to accommodate that. But what we want to make sure of is that your wishes are honored more than anyone else's. And so, for example, it is not uncommon that, let's say it's the husband who's remarrying, right, and has a couple of kids. Typically, what you'll see is that there's an intent to get the assets that were pre-second marriage to go to those kids. Maybe the assets they acquire as a new couple, which might be for a long time, in those cases, those assets they might want to divide in a different way, but typically they want everything from their first marriage, so to speak, to go to the kids of that. One of the best ways, and this is where elder law, I think, is more advantageous than simply estate planning, is that's likely we're going to recommend a prenuptial agreement, right? So that when you get married that second time, you've already figured that out. You've gone through that process, but it takes the form of a prenuptial agreement, because the prenuptial agreement will take precedence over a change in a will, for example, so that there won't be the arguments later, if you have that prenuptial agreement, amongst the kids of what you intended. So it's a strong document. That doesn't mean you still shouldn't have wills and or trusts and powers of attorney. All of that's still true, but the prenup really helps in those situations.
Wonderful. How can veterans benefit from elder law services?
Similarly, all the same things that anyone could benefit from, veterans can benefit from. However, veterans have some more benefits that typically people who are not veterans don't have. VA benefits is what we're talking about, which can dramatically change your outcome if you need nursing home care. you may not need Medicaid because you'll have veterans benefits. But that's very complicated. And this is, you remember at the beginning when I told you that we don't have certifications? This is one area at the federal level where there are attorneys who are certified to practice basically before the VA because they are so specialized. This area of law is so unique. So if you're a veteran and you're looking at this, you're going to want to find an attorney, hopefully an attorney who's not only an elder law attorney, but is also certified on veterans issues at the federal level.
Wonderful. Okay, so next question from, I put my glasses on here. Already set up to have a designated beneficiary of each of my accounts, such as bank accounts and retirement accounts. So one of my family members is also on the joint tenancy of my house. I don't have any more additional assets. Do I still need a trust?
It's going to depend. I can't give you specifics, but what I would say is this, is by putting a designated beneficiary on all your, let's say, cash and cash equivalent accounts, your retirement accounts, perhaps things like that, those things will pass outside of probate. So those will go automatically. And if that's where you want them to go, that's where they're going to go. So you don't need a will and you don't need a trust. And yet I still recommend at a minimum a will. The trust is a bigger question because that contemplates a very active estate plan where you don't do what you just did. In other words, you don't put designated beneficiaries on it. Instead, you put those assets into that trust. So it's a little different. But let's say you don't want a trust and you're comfortable with what you just described, then go ahead and do that, but still have a will. And I like to call it a pour over will. So that in the event that there are still some things that you didn't quite get, or maybe there was a cause of action as a result of your death that can't be in a will or can't be in a trust, you have a will that still says anything extra that comes up, I want to go to so-and-so, these people, whoever that is. So that's very important. Now, the one thing you mentioned that I want to highlight, though, is you said you have joint tenancy with someone on your home. Mm-hmm. That is fine. But understand, at least under Illinois law, if that's the case, when you die, that asset is 100% that person who was the joint beneficiary. They have, or not the joint, I even misspoke. They're not a beneficiary, they're an owner. And so when you pass away, they become the owner. So if your hope is that they would then distribute that to other people, like other children, they might, but they have no legal obligation to. So be careful about that. Make sure, like if you have only one child and that's who you want it to go to, that's perfectly fine, probably. But again, these are highly specific issues. So I'm going to recommend at the end, like always, is you need to talk to someone in your jurisdiction about your particular issues.
Okay, so this will probably be one of our last questions. This is wonderful. From you two, my spouse has dementia. Our thoughts are with you. Came on quickly. We have kept separate accounts to pay various bills. He is now refusing to pay anything. I can't pay all on my own. I suspect a POA is my only option, ?
Well, power of attorney is something that he would voluntarily give you. And so if he's not willing to pay bills, I'm not sure. And also you said he has dementia. I'm not sure he can actually execute a power of attorney because of the dementia. He might be able to, but for the most part, if someone has dementia, it's a big question of whether they're of sound mind, right? There is another option, and this option exists in every state. So I'm not afraid to say that, is a guardianship. That is more likely your option if you can't get his cooperation or he can't execute a document like that. Then you go to court and you have the court appoint you, I would presume, to be his guardian. And then you can take over paying bills and transferring assets and doing whatever needs to be done for his benefit. So that's probably your better option if he truly is in a position where he can't make decisions. And like Lori said, my heart goes out to you. My dad had exactly that situation.
So one of our last questions are, how can seniors protect themselves from scams and financial exploitation as you plan down the road? And there's a lot coming in via phone and email. What's your advice?
Yes. So best thing, now we can draft all the documents in the world. They will not protect you from that unless you have good people by your side. And so that means if you have trusted children, adult children, who you can bounce ideas off of. Like, I got a phone call and it sounds like I won $1 million and they just want me to fill out this form. Talk to people about that. Talk to your trusted friends, your trusted family, trusted advisors. The best thing, the absolute best thing, if I leave you with one thing, is it is have people to talk with about this, because those scams are rampant and they can be pretty convincing. They're good at that. Unfortunately, it's crime, but they're good at it. So have people other than yourself to rely on. And if you're a couple, have people beyond the two of you to rely on to talk these things through. That is the most important thing I could say today.
Wonderful. Thank you. We are going to be posting, hopefully we can do it real quick. Will, if you can post those, we have the senior help hotline hopefully being posted, and then the state resources being posted for you. Those are going to be, senior help hotline is 1-800-252-8966. 1-800-252-8966. That's for the Illinois Department on Aging. If you are experiencing scams or frauds, or if you need help with home delivered meals, help at home, or just general resources for aging at home, feel free to reach out to them. There's also a link for resources for area agencies on aging. If you need to set up resources for your loved one, if you're a caregiver needing some care and just a break, there is a link so you could be able to find at home both resources. You can call or just do a little research. Those are there for you. We want to extend our heartfelt thank you to Steve Anderson for being here. Always insightful, always learning, sharing his expertise and time. And thank you for listening, for your questions, and just giving us 30 minutes. We very much appreciate you coming with us, this dialogue. This is always one of the highlights of our month. Steve and I both work in the Capitol. We lobby for legislation to improve the lives for caregivers in our state, and also protect the rights for nursing home residents and caregivers, and lowering the price of prescription drugs, and lowering the costs of property taxes. So this is kind of the fun part of what we get to do outside
That's
of
right.
everything else. So I do want to circle back for those of you looking for caregiving. We've posted various resources in our comments, but Department of Aging is ILAGING. Just actually, this is a lot. Just Google Illinois Department on Aging, much easier, or ARP caregiving site. ARP has great caregiving resources. We put that in the comments. Fabulous. I mean, really look to it, reference it, share it. Caregiving comes upon, either it's got a long journey or it comes at you real quick. And either way, you're going to need some support, and we're here for you. We want to thank you again. Please come back to ARP. We have virtual events always going on, whether it's exercise, fun, or educational. But ARP can't do this without our volunteers that are behind the scenes making this happen. So look to ARP. So on behalf of ARP, I'm Lori Hendren, Steve Anderson, and we thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.